Hey, good evening. This is Gray from Wakazashi's Tea House over in Japan. How you doing? Are you good? Are you Genki? I hope you are. Looking forward to talking about maybe a little known movie. It's an Australian movie from the 70s, 1975. Wow, I think I was 2 years old when it came out. But I kind of discovered this after, I think it was watching Witness, the Harrison Ford movie, because the director is Peter Weir, and I'd never heard of him. I looked up his back catalogue, and I found that he did Picnic at Hanging Rock. So this is a very, what's the word, individual movie. It's a very emotional movie, maybe very atmospheric. That's what we're looking for. So I have two guests at the moment to help talk about this, help try and make sense of it. Can it even be made to make sense? Maybe not. Maybe that's what's good about it. So let me bring them in. First of all, we have, he's a kind of master of, I think, film studies. He's got great takes. He's all over the YouTube streams. It's Stephen Ransom. Let me bring him in. Hi, Stephen. Oh, you're muted. Sorry, mate. How are you doing? Good to see you.
I don't think I have a beard groomed well enough for that introduction, Gray.
Looking good. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, we also have, all the way from the land of the hobbits, I think, and wizards and things, it's Blair de Blair with the best beard, as Roman always says, the best beard on the internet. My favourite wizard. How are you doing, Blair?
I'm doing good, thank you. Stephen, you can borrow my beard anytime.
There's definitely a beard escalation going around the panel here, I say.
I know. Baby face to your stubble, and then,
Well, Gray, you said you were 2 when this came out. I was 5. How old were you when this came out, Blair?
I was 5.
Okay, yeah. So we were both 69.
No way. I didn't know that.
70.
You guys are, okay, the same birth year.
Mm.
Oh, 69, 70, 73. There we go. So yeah, as I say, I think it's a probably little known movie. When I put this out last week to the people who come on the panel, I've never heard of it.
Nope.
How about you, Stephen?
But how many films came out right around that same time, too? I mean, you got the one with Christopher Reeve, right? This is probably just before 1980 hit. There was a lot of that Victorian romance,
somewhere in time.
Time After Time, Somewhere in Time, right?
Yeah, both of them.
Even
Ragtime.
some of the Bonnie and Clyde and
Yeah.
Paper Moon also had that same kind of old-timey America kind of feel to it going on.
Ragtime came out late
That's
70s
right.
or late 80s.
Yeah, and
like I said,
Sting, of course, too.
Yeah, there was that kind of the early 1900s thing going on at that time.
Yeah. In fashion as well, because I remember that whole beehive thing coming back in the long with the high neck
The Edwardian
thing, all coming back during the mid to early 70s.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Zaxx.
Good to see Zaxx in the chat. I think hopefully he'll be joining us later on. And we also have Aldan. How you doing? Resident Aussie of the Fellowship. I thought I'd stick my head in. Hey, mate, appreciate it. Have you seen the movie, Aldan? Drop us a comment. Let us know what you think.
Oh, good heavens. Have you been to The Rock?
I've been there, Stephen.
Have you been there?
You have?
Believe it or not.
Oh, my goodness. I have big questions about that rock. I mean, I'm into some ancient society kind of stuff. And that rock is a very suspect-looking piece of geology.
I was there,
right? Don't you agree, Blair? There was some square notches in that rock. I mean, hey, what am I looking at? What's going on there? Is that
back in 1998, guys? 98, 99. I did a year's working holiday in Australia and went there with some friends. It's not too far outside of Melbourne, so yeah, Victoria, and it's a very strange place. It's got its own atmosphere, ancient, of course, volcanic. And I tell you what, Stephen and Blair, The Rock plays a huge part in this movie, of course. How many times did you see faces in The Rock? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, even in the abridged BBC radio program I just recently listened to, they were talking about the geology of The Rock and how in the storyline, the girls are allegedly witness some of the rocks as like a giant egg form, and you could see it in the film. I don't think Weir took advantage. He probably had location issues trying to get shots that he really wanted, and the guys were just like, I'm not putting a tripod over there. No way, man, that's not happening. He's like,
So
move out
then-
further, you know, like Jack Black would do in King Kong. He's like, move a little further back. In.
Right. So Alden makes a thing here. So everything I've read said that this is based on a novel, and the author never said whether or not it was true or not.
Yeah, this is a big deal. This whole part of the discussion, by the way,
Yeah.
this is actually the whole discussion, in my opinion. It's, you know, whether or not it's true, whether or not the book is enticing you to think about whether or not it's true. There's
kinda like
a lot of evidence.
Old Blair Witch thing going on, you know, whether or not it's
Yeah, there's definitely some gaslighting going on here for sure.
Well, for years I thought it was based on a true story, because this is back in the days before the internet. You know, I didn't research it, and then when we were there, Stephen and Blair, me and my friends, we were shouting, you know, Miranda's name. You know, it's powerful. I'm sure everyone does that who goes there. I'm sure, you know, they're searching for Miranda because she's still lost, or is she?
Yeah, right. The ghost will finally reveal itself and says, "My name isn't Miranda."
right.
Yeah,
So
first
where are
off,
we?
the novel was written in the mid-'60s. That blew my mind because after seeing the film, I was just, it does not feel like a story written out of the 60s. No way. Not even the language of it just doesn't feel the same either. Kind of like the way Anne Rice's language doesn't feel like the time period she wrote it in.
Yeah, exactly. The author really puts you in that time period.
So I think it was 67, I'm guessing. Late 60s, the book. But the movie, the story opens up. It's supposed to be St. Valentine's Day, 1900, and we're at Appleyard College. I guess it's a fictional place, but beautiful looking colours there. What do you think of the greenery, the palm trees, the orange of the colour, the college there?
Nice glow about it.
Classic building.
Very
also
like British looking, you know.
It's very colonial looking, isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We get this kind of what's the word? This they keep showing the rock later on, and you've got this building, the rock. I don't know, comparing it, the nature versus.
Oh yeah, the juxtaposition of the two
it.
structures
between the ancient and the, you know, man's little, you know, thing he can control.
Yeah, this is all about that argument that Carl Sagan would make all the time. It's just, you know, we think we're really, really powerful, and then something like this happens, and we're stuck trying to figure out, like, well, I guess we are powerful, aren't we powerful, Dad, aren't we powerful? You know, like, you get a little nervous, right? It makes you really uncomfortable. It's uncanny. This is not supposed to happen in the world.
Yeah, it definitely makes you very uncomfortable with the reality that, you know, human beings are not shit. You know, we're barely hanging in there the way it is. Much less trying to figure out the, you know, greater forces at play, but that have, you know, been around since before even life was on this planet. You know.
That's it. There are references to this throughout the movie, and one of the teachers is saying, you know, oh, was it 1,000,000 years old? Oh, that's right. Nothing. You know, it's only 1,000,000 years ago. There's a lot of focus on time and what time maybe means or doesn't mean. And Stephen and Blair, the opening, I forgot to say, there's a quote from an Edgar Allan Poe poem, isn't there? Yes. What we see and what we seem is but a dream within a dream. Fascinating.
Yeah, this is when India was starting to influence British literature as well. It was right around the same time period because England was bringing a lot of that literature across back into England. That kind of like Buddhist tone. You know, dreams within dreams, the butterfly effect, all that good jazz.
It's a very dreamlike quality to the whole film, you know, not just the scenes at the Rock, but even in this college when they first open the movie. You've got the girls' college are walking around like quoting poetry, giving each other love letters, but it's all shot so beautifully, isn't it? Like
it's the film stop. He's got the light kind of ambient all the time in this film. It always looks like morning sunshine. It's just and she is a Botticelli angel, for crying out loud, young lady.
Beautiful.
Did he film something? He took like a wedding veil and put it over the camera. So that's why you kind of get some of that kind of gauzy, weird thing going on too. Yeah, like you say, it's like the morning light. You know, it's you know very you know, sets the tone. You know, this is kind of like a dream world kind of, you know.
Yeah, like a late Renaissance painting. There's a lot of light is doing Renaissance-like stuff in here.
Just shout out Six in the chat. Good to see Six. And Al Dan is saying, okay, we took some shrooms. We went here, man, at the end of a bender back in my 20s. And all I'm saying is it was weird.
Oh, did you really? Fantastic. Woohoo!
I don't think I can handle some place like that on shrooms. That'd be just too much for me.
I think it would take you...
It's hard to tell. That's one of the failings I think Peter, in his youth, might have made, was we really don't get that in-between scaling. You know, I know what the rock looks like, right? I could probably do a quick sketch, roughly depicting the silhouette, and maybe some speculative shots of like what the internal rock structures might look like. But we never get that in between. It's either the camera's too close because of the rocks, or it's too far away because it's a gigantic piece of geology. You know, so
yeah. The flute of Zamfir. You guys, I don't know if Gray, if you ever saw those commercials. You remember those commercials in the 90s for Zamfir?
No. It
was like one of the, before Napster and all that in the 90s, you could still buy, there'd be these infomercials for Time Life music.
Okay.
And you could buy the collection of whatever.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Fucking Zamfir was on all the time. And this fucking pan flutes and shit. And who's the other guy?
You're not a fan of the pan flutes?
It was just so fucking, cheesy as hell.
I think it works in this film, though. It kind of works. It gives it a weird atmosphere, they're playing Chopin, they're playing classical, aren't they, Stephen, as well? But the pan pipes or the pan flute, I thought it really sets the atmosphere.
Well, yeah, because this period in time is also the resurrection of the fairy and the fairy stories. This is where Tolkien would have dated or known girls like these before he met his wife.
Yeah, wasn't that famous photo of those girls with the fairies? They make those
right around this same time period.
Yeah,
the birth of photography. This is what's so much fun about it. This is it's rattling the cage of reason that we're finding ourselves stuck in, and these girls are a cage within that cage because it's Victorian Australia.
This is a funny scene there.
That's great.
Corset line.
Tying up each other's corsets, you got to keep them. Was it caged in? You can't have the
blind the women,
the sexuality coming out, that kind of thing. There's a lot of that in it as well. I think that's reflected in the choice of the pan flute as well. You going to the god pan.
Yep.
But anyway,
exactly.
I'm all over the place. Yeah, some good scenes. So it sets the scene: Victorian girls boarding school, and they're about to go out for a picnic to Hanging Rock. That's basically the premise, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, freedom, right?
Freedom. Field trip. What was that line, guys, where it says the headmistress says that you're allowed to take off your gloves when you get past the town. Take your gloves off.
Yeah, and they were so excited that it was going to happen too.
Ooh, took my gloves off. Ooh.
So great.
Okay, here we go. So we have a character here. Trying to remember the names, but Miranda is a beautiful Botticelli angel. Thanks, Blair. This is Sarah, isn't it? So what's the relationship here with Sarah and Miranda? Blair, do you remember?
Well, Sarah's an orphan, but she goes to the school because her she's like a ward of somebody. Patron, the guardian sent, and it's heavily implied that they're in love with each other,
right? Because
Miranda actually tells Sarah that I'll be leaving soon. You're going to have to find somebody else to show your affections to. And she is really sad. Yeah, you can tell there's something going on. Whether or not they're full on lesbos, who cares? Right. They definitely have a love relationship.
Yeah, we see multiple times in the school that, it's girls are sleeping in the same bed. It's basically it's like a twin or something that the girls are sleeping together in. So, the mischief level is ridiculous. Like the possibilities of that being displaced in a girl that doesn't even know why she's feeling the way she feels.
And the nice thing about this movie, it's not crass at all. It doesn't treat it even. It's like the sexuality is like a total undertone or undercurrent of it. It's not out and full on display. It's very subdued and very, nuanced, and which I like for a change.
Right. Interestingly enough, it wasn't like it was just that. All sexual notion was repressed and subtle and innuendoed and layered and complicated. It was Victorian Australia, for crying out loud. It was the height of that whole thing. And it was a boarding school on top of it. So grace, language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at her. Look at this office.
Oh yeah, it's all Victorian, real very, very busy. Shit on all the walls, fucking
Look at the
cluttered
background. It's awesome, isn't it? As you say, it's
Hey,
an
it's
awesome scene.
British Empire stuff everywhere. There's stuff
Totally.
from China, India, Indonesia, So
how about this character, Stephen and Blair? Is it Miss Applegate? Is that right? I'm getting the name wrong.
Appleyard.
Appleyard. What did you think of her? She's the headmistress of the school, the private school, and she's kind of got her own things going on in the background.
Well, that hairdo is just, let's just talk about that. I think that would give a person a headache to try and,
I think she was quite a famous actress. Is it Rachel Roberts is the name, an Australian actress anyway. She was quite famous in Australia, but I'm not aware of her.
But yeah, she's, things don't go well for this woman.
Yeah, it's kind of a tragedy, what the whole thing, because whatever happens in this story, it's just the whole situation dries up because of this one incident. I mean, it's the destruction of the school, all the kids are gone. She's aging out anyway, so she didn't know what the hell she was going to do in the next 5 years anyway. That one line she says later on where she's like, I relied on that woman too much. I didn't realize it until now how much I relied on that woman. Speaking of the older woman that goes with them to the picnic.
Yeah, the one of the teachers who disappears as well. Yeah. Like you said, she's going to the end. Then all of a sudden, bam, her time frame jumped up 5 years. And
yes. This would be a bit ahead of schedule. Sorry, the fates,
Exactly.
Okay, we also have the French teacher as well. She's a very pretty woman here. She's pretty cool. Got an important part. She names Miranda as being like a Botticelli angel, angel. So that's a great line when she sees her. She's the last one to see her as she disappears.
It's fantastic in the book that her thoughts are only in the narrative. They're never expressed out loud like they are in the movie. There's a lot of that.
That's interesting.
God, there were so many women that were pulling this look off really, really well in 1975, by the way. I had school teachers that actually looked like these women, so...
Really?
Yeah. Totally crushable. I mean, boy crush as it was.
So she's so wrapped up, isn't she? She's so covered. I think that makes it even more appealing in a way.
The neck
is all the neck, all the way to the neck. It's almost like a mummy's costume wrapped in bandages.
And it wasn't any different for the guys too. You look at the young man, the way he was all buckled up and with layers on top of that.
Yeah, it's almost like a kind of a Victorian version of a hijab. You can still see the face, but everything else is covered.
And there was some practicality to all of this. I mean, washing yourself might actually endanger your health during certain seasons, right? So you don't want to get dirty. And the whole point of clothing is to protect you from the elements, which includes dirt and grime and everything else. So it made sense that it would go all the way up to the neck for insect bites and everything else too.
Yeah, especially being in Australia, dangerous insects. Guys, how about this scene? So they leave the college on a horse and cart, and they pass through a local town. I love this frontier-like town here. It looks almost like an old American West, the old West town. You only see it very briefly, and you see children chasing after their carriage, waving and shouting at them.
Right,
get
nothing
to the
else
town,
better
they take
to
the
do.
gloves off. What else are you gonna do?
Yeah, this Australian town is kind of like their Australian version of the West.
Yeah.
It's kind of that lawn building. It's like a hotel with the verandas and
lots of clay. Lots of clay roads.
Absolutely. Everything covered in dust.
Oh yeah.
So when they get out to the rock, they find there's a small family there having a picnic. This is such a British Empire image, I think. The colonel, his wife, and I think it's the nephew, not the son. Look at what they're wearing. Having a cup of tea, of course. Stephen, how does this strike you when you see these kind of period movies, when you see the British Empire portrayed?
I really enjoy, because for me, it's like I'm reverse engineering. Like, what are these people doing here? Why are they out here at all, dressed the way they are? And it's like, no television, right? They didn't have any video games, right? They obviously wouldn't be playing cards because that might be sacrilegious. And this guy just wants to get the heck out of the house, right? And he finally talked his wife into it, or she finally talked him into it, or whatever, right? You can almost hear the conversation. It's fantastic. And she's not asking him a single thing. Neither one of them is talking to each other the entire time. It's great.
I got a full-on tea set out there and like everything. And they basically packed up half their house and came out to their little picnic.
This scene reminds me of, if you ever seen the movie or read the book, A Passage to India. It's the same thing. It's like they have the British colonials having the whole tea party. They have to transport everything, tables, the cups and the saucers, the spoons. It's just crazy. It's so what's the word?
You get a vibe of that in movies like The Wind and the Lion and Lawrence of Arabia, and Gandhi as well. Does a little bit of that depiction. But this is out in the frontier. This is out in the middle of nowhere.
We have to take civilization everywhere we go.
And it's nice that an Australian made this movie and did this, because Americans would do this thinking that's just how it is. But no, this is an Australian back in the mid 70s doing this because it was a thing. It was the British Empire, and this was before Australia became. It was still really part of the empire. It wasn't like it is now.
Right.
It's not like, I don't know what they did. Yeah. They're not, they federated, or they changed their constitution a little bit, but this predates this. This is still, London still tells them what to do.
Right. How much of an influence was World War I on that transfer of power? I wonder if they just separated because of it financially, like they need them to become isolated, or I don't know.
Britain was just too weak to maintain all this stuff.
Yeah, because they were doing India on top of that, as well as Hong Kong, right? I mean, goodness gracious, right? You guys can handle it, right? You got this. Singapore. You got this. We're busy over here.
Exactly.
How about this, guys? The comment here from Zaxx. I noticed this as well. It was kind of distracting. This is basically the servant, isn't he? One of the servants who's helping out that rich family, and he's got flies on his face almost the whole time. I don't know how he does it. He ignores it. That's a real Australian thing. The flies are everywhere.
Yeah, you just see those poor bloodhounds. Some of those shots of those bloodhounds with all the flies on their face. I was like, oh my God, those poor dogs.
I remember that. I always thought the same thing. So we have him. It's a nice, again, Stephen, a good juxtaposition of the rich family, and then you have him, the serving boy,
he's got the tats on his arm.
He's got tattoos. He's drinking some wine or some beer or something. Yeah, and he's kind of befriending the cousin.
Beer. I think it's a 40.
Yeah,
or a pint, basically.
A nice pint.
Double pint or something. But he goes to rub off the top of the bottle, right, before he takes a swig off of it, and then he doesn't do it the second time. There's a lot of great stuff that Peter is trying to get these actors to do, and it's just they never get a natural shot for me. This is where I start to have issues with the film. The setting is gorgeous. The production design is really good. The costuming is on point, although they probably should have dirtied up a little bit more. The shirts look brand new, right? Like they were just made yesterday. Yeah. Shove those things with some boulders into the laundry a few times, right? Stonewash that shit, would you?
Steven.
But their relationship, I've heard a couple of reviewers say that there might be some gay thing, because there's this homosexuality kind of vibe going through the whole thing. And it was very much a part of the conversation in film back then, too, where But I don't think so. I don't see it. I
think so
watched the
either.
film. I listened to the abridged. I just don't hear it. It's like he's a young man. They're both young men. If you want to homoeroticize it, fine. Whatever. I could see what you're talking about. They're both cute. It's like
Zaxx is commenting on that here, Stephen and Blair. Yeah, it made you think
thought
that
it was
something
too.
monumental was going to happen, but can't guys just be friends? I know you've got the whole public
exactly.
school boy.
And that's what eventually happens. They just turn out to be kind of chums.
That's
Nothing
right.
else,
They turn into mates, mates. And going back to the Stephen, your comments on the girls' school as well. It doesn't mean they're necessarily lesbian lovers, does it? There's a kind of a pure love, like an adolescent love, where you love your friends. Or is it just me? I'm reaching here. Okay.
No, I think there are two different types of packs that became attached to our, I'm going to say, to our sexualities. And that is the harem and the fighting group, right? Or the hunting party. And that kind of got ingrained into us a long, long time ago. And that doesn't exclude males being part of both and females being part of both. But there is a macho-ness that is accustomed to the hunting party, whether they are boys, girls, or otherwise. The whole spitting, we're going to get dirty, stop being a pussy, like all of that kind of jazz going on. And then there's the harem where everything's clean, you're all lounging about, there are pillows involved, you know what I mean? It's like wine and it's like ingrained in a certain sense. And when these girls are picnicking, you can see them, they all fall asleep on each other, and it's like no big deal. Like they were cats sitting in a window box.
I think Blair just exploded. I think he'll be right back. He'll be okay. Stephen, this shot here that I took, it was to show. I love this perspective, looking up, and you've got the rock, of course, in the distance above them, towering over them. It's a great angle here.
Yeah, I think Peter wanted to do more. It's so obvious that he wished he could muscle the camera a little bit more, but there might have been some technical issues that he wasn't able to overcome with lens issues, right? The set and being able to shoot through trees to show the rock formations. Because there's that painting that even inspired the author originally that actually depicts a very similar circumstance in a Victorian setting of a picnic group.
Is that what it was? I know what you mean.
And we see it a couple of times in here. He definitely gives us some what they would call screenshots or desktops. These images. They're really, really pretty.
Really pretty, beautiful. They used this for one of the covers. I think the Criterion collection, if they reissued it. And just speaking of that, I'll just briefly read from that, Stephen. It says here about Picnic at Hanging Rock. It's a sensual, striking chronicle of a disappearance and its aftermath. This put Peter Weir on the map, and it helped usher in a new era of Australian cinema. Based on the acclaimed 1967 novel by Joan Lindsay, Picnic at Hanging Rock is set at the turn of the 20th century, concerns a small group of students from the all-female college who vanish along with a chaperone while on St. Valentine's Day. There we go. Beautiful shot.
Yeah, he was saying in an interview that I saw that this was the first time Australia... He said, and they've been doing it in the West for the longest time, but this was the first time Australia had tried to execute an adaptation of a very popular novel. So this is one of the first adaptations in Australian film history, according to him. It's one of the few.
Just before that picnic scene, we get this I think quite an important scene here. This is the driver of the horse and cart, and he's like, what time is it now? He checks, his watch has stopped at 12 noon, and he asks one of the teachers, the same things happened to her watch, it stopped at 12, and they're kind of guessing, maybe, what time is it now? Maybe it's 2, so we've already lost 2 hours.
Right, and this is the first device in the book and in the movie that basically sets it up as possibly paranormal.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's the first trope, basically. The watches stop. Like any ufologist or, Fortean Society guy would just be like, uh-oh.
Here we go.
Yeah. This ought to be good.
We've got Al Dan talking about it. You should see what your watches do here because he's been here, the picnic, the Hanging Rock, when you're tripping. Well, I don't know.
Oh, really? Is there a geological effect? Because I've heard the same thing about Stonehenge and several other ancient sites. It's
magnetic.
Mechanical watches get a little bit wonky.
Interesting.
It's there are some effects that a lot of people don't realize because they don't get into it in these ancient site shows, but a granite chamber, all made out of granite slabs, will generate a radioactive field inside because of the nature of granite as an amplifier, like the way a parabolic mirror works.
Wow.
But made out of granite. You make it into a box, the quartz inside of the granite actually starts resonating because of the temperature changes, because of the sunlight, and it literally will generate a radioactive field that could potentially fry your brain if you stay in that cave too long.
There was a thing here, because in America, granite countertops are such a big deal. And they talked about that a few years ago. You know, the granite was so popular that it's slightly radioactive, especially depending on what type you get.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like a hidden danger to your house was that, you get this nice slab of slightly radioactive,
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, if you've totally made a box out of that shit, yeah, you can totally.
Right. It becomes an amplifier. We see that you just build a cardboard box. It'll amplify sound, right? It'll amplify anything. It amplifies volume by holding it into a box shape, right? It's able to hold more stuff in a single space instead of a pyramid mound kind of, right? It's the same thing. So, the idea that whatever this rock is made out of, we don't know. Is it a basalt, right? Does she ever say what it's made out of? Is it limestone? But all of these geological structures have effects because of their shape. They become waveforms of a sort.
I can't remember exactly. I know it's volcanic rock of some kind, but I love the way we're maybe not quite halfway through the movie now, and they show more and more of the rock. It becomes much more of a personality in the movie. And Stephen and Blair, did you notice the background music at times? The normal music drops, and there's this kind of like what's the word, like a vibrational music sound, like a hum, a hum,
or it's not like a heartbeat type thing was.
Yeah,
right.
That adds to the paranormal effect, I think. After the stopwatches, and then. Yeah, you're seeing these weird shapes in the rocks, maybe possibly look like faces or look like figures in the rocks.
Yeah, there was a lot of that tonal soundtrack stuff going on. You think about what happened in Planet of the Apes and 2001, of course, and things like Omega Man, where it's just like boom, 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 like that whole tonal thing happening, almost like it's whistling.
Okay,
it's what Hans Zimmer does all the time, by the way. It's like he just does those tonal things where it's not music anymore, Hans. You're just affecting our bodies with amplified tones, right? It's very harmonic.
It's like it's like the whole thing's being activated somehow,
Right.
The engine is building whatever it is.
Like a theremin, right? Like that old UFO sound of like...
Steve and Matt here saying that, Stephen, you're thinking electromagnetic, not radioactive. Check your DMs. I just sent you a scientific paper. They studied this effect. Thanks, Matt.
He's probably not lying either, too. Check my DM. It's blowing up.
Well, I have no idea about the geological science of it. I just know that it's very effective and very kind of portentous for the future of the movie. Where are we? What's next? Here
it's funny that everyone, when I say something like radioactive, everybody assumes atomic, like plutonium or uranium radioactive. But my light bulb is radioactive because it is radiating a frequency we call white light. It's like, sorry, technical terms. So a magnet is radiating a field. But yes.
So we get the four main characters, the girls who go off to explore the rock, and with some nice shots here, seeing it from down passages or through like tunnels and things. You can see them. So What did you guys think of the performances then, generally? Because they don't really have that much to say, do they? There's a lot more of just walking around.
A lot of those girls are not actors.
Okay.
When he wanted, so he was looking for women, and he couldn't find anybody in the cities because they kind of looked too modern. So they went out into like the rural areas and found people who looked more like they would have back then. But they were not actors or actresses. So he had to cut a lot of the dialogue down to bare minimums. That's why you see, just a few people talking, a lot of people just hanging out, lounging around, doing little stuff in the background.
Yeah.
So,
you could see it. In my opinion, it's one of the big failings of this film.
Acting wise this is not the best acting.
Right. I mean, I think the camera needed more Kubrick-isms in it. Some sort of leveling of the plane and pulling back so that the geological structures around them were setting almost a stage, like these one vignette after another where characters are moving through a single shot that's very static, like going along with the hum. The camera would just be static as hell, like almost annoyingly static, like The Rock is annoyingly static.
Yeah, you can tell he's a new director,
Yeah. I'm sure this was very difficult. I mean, the girls were probably, it's hot, I wonder, who was adventurous and who was annoyed. I could see that happening on set as well.
Scenes like this, you talked about being a new director. He was kind of experimenting with some of the, I don't know what you call this process, Stephen, you might be able to say, but I love this
double exposure.
Here. Double exposure, isn't it beautiful? This is where they start to feel the effect of the rock, and they take off their shoes and their stockings.
That's fantastic.
One of the girls can't believe it. Like, you're taking your shoes off. What are you doing?
Right. She was totally freaking out. And, it's hard to wrap your head around. You're trying to you're watching this movie. You're just like, this is weird. And it's like, no, actually, like that chunky girl was probably punished at home for any indiscretions like that. Right. She was probably spanked by the maid.
Very repressed.
Yeah. So that was a very serious thing. These girls were living the life of the 60s 100 years beforehand, basically. This whole thing of taking off their stockings and walking around barefoot, it's like walking into some Japanese guy's house with your boots on, all covered in mud.
Speaking of Japan, konnichiwa. Yeah, but I love this though, and it's such a simple thing, but you guys probably know about this, that people have a belief, and I believe they think that if you walk barefoot, especially on the actual earth, on the ground, on soil, on sand, you can pick up some kind of, I don't know about energy or something from the ground. It can be very healing. Connection, yeah. It can really help. It makes you feel good for a start.
Yep. I thoroughly agree with that. And although it's a lampoon on the subject, I think that's where the Die Hard bit comes from, of like scrunching your feet in the carpet, scrunching your toes in the carpet. That's basically keying in on the same concept, that the human mind wants to feel grass in their toes, mud through their toes. And I think oh my goodness, the British author who wrote a lot in India,
Kipling,
Jungle Book, Kipling writes those expressions like "fresh mud through my toes" was a gleeful response by one of his boy characters. Like, it felt so good to be taking off your shoes.
What do you think, Blair? And you can see this as another sign of like the repression, the restraints being taken off.
Yeah, exactly. And then
where are they going?
They're being called almost, but they don't really know it.
It's a strange scene, isn't it? The kind of, as Stephen described it, the chunky girl who's kind of sat down and complaining. She sees them walk off, and she's like shouting, "Where are you going? Without your shoes on." And she starts freaking out. And then we get this crazy cut where she's screaming her head off and just running. Running.
Yeah, whatever happens, she rejects whatever's going on and bolts. She finally realizes something probably not good is going to happen to these people.
Well, she realizes she's going to be left alone. That's really was my take. Is like, that's what she was really screaming about. Is like, oh my God, I just realized I am now alone and I can't even get up because I'm exhausted. She probably was. I mean, that's a bit of a hike.
And she talks about they don't show that the teacher also joins these girls.
Yeah.
She goes to
see
do
that.
that, and then when she's running down the mountain, she mentions that the teacher took her corset off, and that was it's scandalous that a woman would be out and about without her corset. So she's doing the same thing. She's taking off her clothes and
it's almost as if
restraints.
Thematically, The Rock is asking those who are willing to be progressive, right? Take off your socks and shoes, join me in nature, and even the wisest of them submits to it. She took off her stockings and took off her skirts so that she was just in what she considered to be pants. She probably thought it in her head, they're just pants, right? It's like, I'm wearing pants, okay? The boys do this all the time, right? Because she's wise.
Yeah, they were described as was it pantaloons? So they're
Pantaloons,
probably all the way down to the ankle as well.
Right.
It's not she's
they'd
just
be
in
what ladies wear to the supermarket all the time. It's loose
she didn't
sweats.
have a skirt. She took her skirt off. It's like, oh my god.
That was wild. That the police officer wasn't just like, stop this nonsense, young lady, and tell this police officer what I want to know. It's like, what the heck? Where was that? He was like, she didn't want to say it because it was impromptu. It was impolite. And it's like, this is evidence. There are 3 girls missing. What's going on here?
And when he tells them, he's like, oh my god,
Yeah, he was ignoring it just because of impropriety. Which goes to show, this is proof to me that the reason why there's so much mystery during the Victorian era in Europe is because of impropriety more than anything else. That's why there's so much mystery, People were afraid to say stuff.
Impropriety, for goodness sakes.
You have used that's so improper.
Actually, it's funny you say that. There's a good point. I'm paraphrasing here, but earlier on with the boy, the kind of the servant boy, he's talking about those. He sees the girls. He's like, wow, she's all right. Look at her legs. They go all the way up to her bum. And the posh boy says oh, stop saying those vulgar things. And he's like, yeah, but I'm saying them, but you're thinking them.
Yeah, it's great.
You're
it's
still
a great
thinking
little
them.
Conversation. Imagine that dialogue in the hands of some real craftsmen. I mean, there was so much good stuff that script was really going to try and execute. And are you guys aware that there's a new series coming out that'll be on Prime? There's a mini series called Picnic at Hanging Rock coming out.
I heard something about it. Yeah.
And I'm very, very, very disturbed because
me too.
First of all, the coincidence was just like, wait, what? It's like Gray just mentioned this out of the blue, on a lark. Here we are talking about it, and there's a Prime series. It's like, you're probably going to get some hits just because of people doing research on the Prime series. You'll get some hits on this, Greg.
Good.
Okay, Dan's saying it's already out, maybe. So maybe, did it drop in Australia or it dropped somewhere first? Because
I know there was a series, but I thought it was from 2018.
Oh, that could very well be it, too.
Maybe it's just finally coming to Prime, but, things do take a while sometimes.
That's true.
Yeah, they all kind of pass out.
Yeah.
Lovely shot here with the lizard. Is it lizard? I'm not sure what it is. While they're sleeping, it just walks past. And you see that quite a lot throughout the film, Stephen and Blair, don't you? There were close-ups of ants at one point, eating the bits and bobs of the leftover food from the picnic. Yeah. You see the birds flying in the sky with a weird sound.
There's a lot of mentions of it in the novel. The novel talks about the girls were had fallen into such a deep sleep that the animals felt comfortable around them.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Which was another mystical thing where they were communing with the earth on such a level that this lizard in the book literally just falls asleep in the crook of her armpit. But nothing harms them in the book. It's nothing ever brings them harm in the book, which is interesting.
Here we go. Let's see if can you see the face or the faces?
I love it
now.
Suggestion of it. It's
the
cool.
Lips. It's you could see the lips right there. In the center of the frame, there's lip with a nostril just above it. Very sharp. Yep. It's almost like vignettes of people looking in different directions, suspecting, questioning, thinking. Yeah. A lot of that
one
stuff.
as well. Look at that. That's a face. I'm sure. Big eye and a nose and mouth, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Blimey.
Okay, I agree. What's going on?
One more. Okay, yes, it is interesting, your Barmy. Great to see you in the chat as well. We still got Matt is here, the that shouldn't be. Aldan's still here. Snacks
Hey,
and
Barmy.
friends. Good to see you. Did somebody say pantaloons? Yes. Your Barmy, good to see you, man. Six was here before as well, and Zaxx hopefully popping in soon. So we talked about, okay, this is Peter Weir's maybe first major hit, and Stephen was asking what else has he done. We talked a little bit in the studio, didn't we, Stephen, before?
Right.
He's famous for Gallipoli, for The Year of Living Dangerously, Witness, Mosquito Coast, Dead Poet Society, Green Card. Never mind that one. Fearless. That's a good one, by the way. You'd never seen that. That's a bit of a weird one. Fearless. Mm-hmm. The Truman Show and Master and Commander, Far Side of the World.
Good. And it's like, that's the second time you've told me that he did the Truman Show, and it always winds up being swallowed or offhand somehow that you mention it. It's like, no, the guy did the Truman Show. He did Dead Poet Society. It's like, listen up, kids. This guy has done some stuff. I mean, these are some serious, just metaphorically within the dialogue of like filmmaking. The Truman Show, Dead Poets. Wait a second. Wait, what? Like, this guy's got some voice. Mosquito Coast. I mean, that was like one of River Phoenix's last films. That movie.
Gallipoli was a kind of a throwback too, because it was in the early '80s. You know, it took place in World War One.
It was set World War One, wasn't it, Blair? Yeah.
Yeah, they're running at the Ottoman lines, trying to get to the lines, and it's all about a foot race, and most of them didn't make it because they're trying to beat the machine guns. But yeah, that was
I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh yeah, it was a really check it out, Gallipoli.
That's a young Mel Gibson too, isn't it? If I remember, off the top of my head, it's a really good, early war movie from an Australian perspective, of course, the Australian lines. Speaking of Australia, guess who's coming in now? We have all the way from Canada. It's Zaxx.
Hey, Zaxx.
Good day, Gray. Huh?
That wasn't so bad.
G'day, mate. How you going, Zaxx? You good?
Good.
You Genki?
I am.
I'm trying to make him laugh.
I've actually been to Australia, so
Oh,
so have you. Yeah.
Me too.
I didn't go to this rock thing though. More beaches, less rocks. Lots of boobs. Lots of boobs.
Aldan saying, "Don't do that again, Zaxx." I swear. Now, bloody worries.
You don't like that? Also, they don't. I couldn't. They gave me a look when I tried to order Foster's there.
I've heard this story.
Yeah, I did. That's real. They don't. Yeah, I guess it's not really a thing there, but we believe it to be, and so they get annoyed by it probably all the time. That's my guess.
Yeah, right.
Right. I don't think there's any reason to mention Barbie down there. Or shrimp.
No throwing shrimp on the Barbie. No knife and spoony talk.
In the UK, we had Foster's. We also had 4X. You ever heard of that? Castlemaine 4X. And when I got to Australia, the Australians told me, no one in Australia drinks that, mate. That's the shit we send to England.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Yeah, Foster's
so anyways,
like Outback restaurant. It's all it's made up bullshit.
Aldan's saying, that stuff is terrible. Basically, okay.
Oh, but the Subaru's a rad pickup truck. The Subaru Brett, it's a good pickup truck.
So Zaxx, why we've got you here?
I'll just a troll on this.
You've seen this movie. You watched it especially for this stream, I believe. What did you think?
I did.
Is it your first time, first of all?
Yeah, you know what? I actually thought I'd seen it before, but no, I knew right away I had not. I must have mixed it up with something else. Maybe Heavenly Creatures, I was thinking.
Yeah, it's a very similar vibe. That same
vibe.
kind of haunting.
Yeah, I think this was kind of like a meditation on women's suffrage and how it was a mistake in North America to let the vote.
Like, there we go. I just was reeling out my gullibility a little bit there.
Me too.
And then I started hearing it pull back on me, and I yanked it in and started reeling that thing back in.
I mean, because if you think about this film, every female character made a bad decision every time they had the opportunity to do so. all the way through the film.
Mhm.
It was every single time it was bad, down to the very end. It was just bad decision after bad decision that like all these dudes try to bail them out of, but can't because they won't stop making bad decisions. So
interesting.
I'm not
take.
saying women shouldn't vote. I'm saying that women, you know, they should be allowed to vote, obviously, but maybe we should have thought about it more. That's all.
Nosferatu says he voted for women's suffering, but then realised it said suffrage.
They tricked us. We always get tricked. That's the one thing for sure. Yeah. See? Oh, Dan gets it. And
not
like
a famous
you look
movie,
at the beginning,
Zaxx, is it? Not a big hit. It's not a famous one, but is
I've
it
heard
worth
of it,
watching?
though.
Is it worth watching? Would you recommend it?
I think so. You just have to go into it. Like I was, the first part was very slow, and I like.
Oh yeah.
And it was made by Peter Weir, he likes to, you know, take his time with the shots, and
yeah,
I think that you could tell this, you could do this, have the same beauty in this, maybe just cut down some of it a little bit to get you into the story a little sooner, because I think, like you guys pointed out multiple times, the dialogue and the acting was not great, so it was the story that pulled you in, and the story didn't really get going until, you know, they're wandering off onto the rock.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about like some of the cinematography. Had the camera just locked off a few times and just set the tone, you know, image-wise, set the tone of this is going to be our angle, right? Every time we go back to this angle, it's like we're breathing, right? It's like just something stationary, because it's just off the rails in so many different directions. The camera's pointing up for no reason sometimes. It's like, she's not powerful right now. Who is she who is the camera submitting to? And like all of these cinematographic cleverness, it felt like, without necessarily strong intention. I wish there was more intention visually in the movie.
Well, there was the framing shots of the characters, and especially the two younger guys, and they weren't giving you really anything. So if it was a better performer, maybe they're giving you something, but it's just a blank faced dude. And the guy with the I don't know what his job would be, but he's like he's a
chauffeur, basically. He's a chauffeur,
okay.
stable boy.
He was much better than the other guy.
He was.
Yeah.
So he gave you a bit more in those interactions, but that other kid was just, you know, no offense, but it was just like flat effect.
Yeah, and he should have been a linchpin. He was a linchpin for that part of the story. He was supposed to be like the poetic anime hero, where like he takes it upon himself to find these girls. Like he's like pulling the sword out of the stone. He's going to go up there, even if it's going to kill him. And you know, he's got this young man who knows his little trick of putting the flags up on the twigs. And that's like his saving grace. It's like, I trust that he'll save me from my stupidity, because he knows he's being ridiculous. But he has to see about these girls. It's killing him. He can't sleep.
And I like that part of his character. Like, it was a good character. I just wish the actor could have given us a bit more.
Wasn't the best performance, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
It was, but the story was really cool, and you never find out what was happening. You assume it's aliens of some kind, right? But then you find that one girl, and she's still there, but she's all beat up. So what did she get?
And she has no memory.
By the way, in the book, she's described as bloodied.
Okay.
There's blood all over her, like from scratches and bruises across her face. There's dried blood that's been dried for weeks, you know. So like the whole time, it's been dried for a long time. And she's found unconscious, not just sleeping. That's what I mean about she's not none of them are dirtied up. It would have been nice to have seen some physical reality of them getting a little scrungier as they got up the hill. But it looks like they filmed it in a week. It looks like they filmed the whole movie in a week.
They probably did. I mean, I'm sure the budget on this was nothing, you know.
Well, down here in the comments, he's half joking. He's saying, to be fair, it was a dude with a handheld Kodak in the back of a ute filming it. That was it.
Probably. Pretty damn close.
Very low budget.
I think it's impressive for what they were, for the money they spent on it. It was his first film. These are people who don't act. So I'm not saying it's just, I think that with a little bit more experience, you could have done it, and I think it would have been it would have been a better overall film. I still really enjoyed it, especially once you get into it. You get pulled into it. It's just that first part. I'm like, I'm trying not to skip ahead. Like, this Miranda, you beautiful young girl, but like, I didn't feel any kind of connection there. The only connection I got was through the other girl who was left behind.
Sarah,
sister. Yeah.
Right. Poor Sarah. Yeah.
I could get that connection because she was so connected to her.
Yeah, she's intense. She's got a very intense look, and they took advantage of it to good effect, for sure.
Yes.
But, yeah.
So I just think that they could have done it. But given what they had, better than Kenobi and the volume. And
I know, right?
And the environment was a character. And that's one of the things I think you have to do with a small budget film is use that. And they really did a good job with it.
It's a great choice that he decided to shoot on location, but that probably killed his budget. It probably just crucified his budget. I mean, they were in the bush. 1975, they're in the bush over there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nos. Thank you.
Flies on the face.
And
Guys,
you
what
can
do think
hear
about-
it. You always hear the bugs buzzing when they're
Yes.
outside too. Okay, that's probably Australia. I'm sure if somebody's from Australia, they would know exactly.
Yeah, they talk about cicadas in the book.
And you see the guy catches one on his forearm and shakes it up and throws it in the air. But
I thought there was going
He's
to
a
be more
tough guy.
It's a weird scene. It's just like...
I know. Like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Where are we going with this? Was this
He's like,
foreshadowing?
I'm not scared. You see, I'm not scared. Gentleman boy, clean boy, college boy. You know, it's definitely the way a mechanic would hassle a yuppie.
But that would have been better. What you just did.
Yeah. It's really, the performances really do a number on this. So you could tell that there's a lot of story here, even through those performances. And the girls are just doing nothing. It's like, what did they film them for one day, those girls? I mean, I didn't feel any buildup of chemistry in the field.
No.
There was no crescendo where you could see them becoming either more graceful or less. Or are they being seduced by the rock? I mean, we never get any of those tones. Never happen visually on screen.
It's almost like a painting, isn't it? It's like, it's an art house movie, so it's not really about the performances maybe or the chemistry. It's about the look, the visual side. What do you think about this, guys? On the Criterion page, it says it's less a mystery than a journey into the mystic, as well as an inquiry into issues of class and sexual repression in Australian society. There we go. Pretty sums it up.
Yeah, totally.
So, did the mystery side of it put you off, Zaxx, or did you enjoy the kind of, open-endedness of it, the intrigue? What's it all about?
I like the mystery of it. I wish we would have got a bit more of the mystery. And I wish some of the attempts to find the girls didn't look so pathetic.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah.
No, just what you mean. The crawling scene.
Yeah, what are they doing?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
What was it, like the energy waves getting to him? He couldn't.
Yeah.
There's a force field.
Yeah,
In
it's
the
like
dirt? Like
He's just that pathetic and weak.
It's funny.
It's like, I forgot to tell him we weren't shooting at a radical angle with the camera. Like, he didn't realize that the camera was at a different angle. He was pulling a Robin or something. He thought it was
Exactly.
yes, it was like Batman, but
Batman and Robin,
Yeah.
66.
just swimming on the dirt. And then
It's like, should we tell him? Nah, just let him go. Just let him.
Exactly. We'll fix it post. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happened to those,
surprise,
the whole
surprise, they
group?
could.
That whole group was there at the very beginning, not the beginning, but the cop took them with the Aborigine tracker, and they all just kind of like, they get to the rock and they kind of all lay down, and it cuts to they're back at the house and they kind of gave up, and I would have liked to have seen the efforts there.
Yeah, that was a big cut, wasn't it? A strange cut.
I thought so.
Yeah, we should have felt a sense of day and night, because this search party was doing it day and night, whether the police wanted them to or not, and the police had to blockade them on several occasions, according to other sources.
And that would have been cool to show the struggles of trying to do that at a time when you don't have flashlights,
Right.
There's no drones, there's no
torches.
helicopters. You have torches, and it's nighttime, and there's dingoes everywhere, I assume.
Right, and dogs have to sleep, right, and everybody has to be fed, and wives are getting worried. I did like that. This
And work is not
kind of
being
speculative conversation in town of what happened.
Everything in town shuts down because they're trying to find his kids. What happens
Right.
then?
There you go. There's that too. There's like the sociopolitics of it.
That's a good point, actually. They could have done that too. Yeah, it was just in the beginning was lots of images of just kind of the laying around, and I would have liked to have got a little bit more to know who those girls were, so so you cared a bit more. But I mean, I did like it. I sound like I'm bashing it like crazy, but I did enjoy it. It's
no, of course
I think
not.
a few changes could have taken it up a few more levels, even though it was, given the considerations, it was still a good film.
Reminds me of the Nicholas Rogue movie, Walkabout. Have you guys seen that?
Yes.
Sort of set in the
I probably have.
Yeah.
That's like
Very
the only Australian
slow-paced.
movie from the 70s I remember is Walkabout.
Yeah.
And how just weird it was that they're like, walking around the outback, going to these empty mining towns where one guy's a caretaker, and it's not clicking in his head that these kids need help. He's worried about his position because he's afraid that they're gonna vandalize and steal everything. But they're kids. It's get on the phone, call some help, you fucking moron. But you're wandering around out in the middle of Australian outback, and you think you're walking between dimensions. It's fucking weird. And this movie is weird too.
What was the story?
Fucking weird place.
There is a true story to some of this, is there not?
That's actually the point.
No.
The author makes a really big deal about not talking about it. Peter Weir didn't get permission to not ask her, and he asked her anyway, and she goes, "Young man, that will be the last time you ask this question," the author said.
It was kind of like the Blair Witch of its day.
I think
really
it was
happen,
she
or?
was nervous to talk about it because she was so excited about the palpitation in the public. That she didn't want to disturb it at all by even promoting a theory, because who knows what the real truth was. There's certainly a lot of parallels with her schooling and the story. So
yeah, the less she said, the better it was for her book sales.
Right.
And
That's a good point. Yeah,
but she went through to a similar school. She had similar relations in school with other young ladies as well, and she was part of that movement during the 60s. Part of that the beat culture, and so it was definitely very intentional what she did. And once it got rolling, her and her editor were probably just like, "Don't touch it, just don't say a damn word, just let the magic happen. The magic is just happening, just let it go." It's a ghost story, and it just got way beyond their own control in the culture.
Ghost story is a good way to look at it. Did you like the book?
I've only heard an abridged BBC performance, a radio performance of it, but the language is very similar. There's, of course, a prevalent narrator, a disembodied narrator, so it's being told from a God point of view by a narrator. But it's basically that kind of Lovecraftian vibe, and about midway through, just like in the film, it becomes a procedural. The cop is going around, he's asking questions, they're talking about letters in the paper the next day, it was written, blah, 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 very Victorian. And it's nice. I like it. I like that kind of historical docudrama kind of feel to the whole thing.
I kind of talk about everything's
looks like. I was going to say, Aldan's been there. I'm curious to know if it's busy. Is there a lot of people there? Is it a place that tourists go to or local people go and flock to?
I've been there, Zaxx.
You've been there?
Well, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not too far out of Melbourne, so that area, and in the movie it portrays it as it looks like it's in the middle of nowhere, a bit like Ayers Rock, but it's not like that as far as I recall. Otherwise, I had to drive out there, but it didn't take so long. But this is 25 years ago. I can't remember exactly. Aldan let us know in the chat. I think they did very well not to show any surrounding towns or sign of habitation.
Yeah, the kinds of things that I think would have improved the tone of the film a great deal would have been some of those jump cuts to a shot of the mountain with some sort of very ethereal, powerful music, like the mountain is speaking in this shot. Just a few times sparsely placed through this kind of tone of the mountain to just give us the sense that this thing is doing something. I don't know what it's doing, but it's doing something, and it's affecting these girls, or it's affecting the town, and everything else would have worked just as is. Even the disoriented dialogue probably would have worked better if you thought that the mountain was doing something to them, like puppeteering or something. It could all be done with a soundtrack.
Good points.
Yeah,
like a Pied Piper effect, almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
A siren's call or something.
Exactly. Yeah, which
I
was
like how
also
in-
very Victorian.
So, before we're talking about, they don't have electricity, they don't have cars, they don't have radios.
Mhm.
So the newspaper is a big deal. They talk
Yeah.
about how this story has been written in newspapers all across the world. You see a few newspaper things where they're reading about, and there'll be a picture of one of the kids, or a drawing. And then, the early photography of, everybody getting together for the little, okay, we're getting ready to go look for the people shot,
Yeah.
And then like an early version of a paparazzi cameraman guy shows up to the school and he's like filming the college.
Right.
And the headmistress comes out and screams at him to get away, send the press away. How funny it was, it was just like, one guy. And that was like, too much for him.
Yeah, well,
that was funny because all the setup time it would have taken for him to get that thing, and the girls are all sitting there, and they wait until, and then it appears as though he takes the picture, and then they get all alarmed and leave. But he's right there. If you're going to be alarmed by this guy, like, you probably could have got up and left at any point. But
Yeah,
he
right.
is right there.
Right.
It was all, that was a bit weird. The timing of that was strange. Like, I couldn't tell if it
once
was that they
again-
were upset or the headmistress was mad and they ran from her. It was hard to read that, but
Yeah, if there was just a little bit of a murmur and a giggle in the ADR, that it would have totally sold that the girls were totally fine being photographed by this guy.
Oh, yeah.
It was the headmistress that had a problem.
Right.
yeah, 100%. That's a good idea.
School's
ADR.
reputation has been, destroyed now. And which is what you eventually see is, this is a fucking disaster. They went for a little picnic and all of a sudden three students and a teacher disappear. One eventually comes back. The three are now presumed dead and gone. All of a sudden, everybody starts pulling their kids out of school. Like, yeah, you're not going back to that place next year.
Right.
Fucking Death Academy.
Well, it's not even that. It's like, why am I paying for you to go there? You're totally distracted by this whole thing. There's the press is showing up at your school. I'm paying for you to study. I didn't want to pay for you to study in the first place. So there's that too. It's like, what are you girls doing over there? And it's like, yeah, it was just a mess. The whole thing got shut down, got crushed.
It
The
would be
staff's upset,
scandalous, really.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, huge.
Oh, yeah.
Huge scandal. And it drives her to drink, doesn't it? Miss Appleyard, the headmistress, who I was calling Applegate, thinking about Christina. I just want to read very briefly. This is about the book, guys. It says here, although the events depicted in the novel are entirely fictional, it's framed as though it were a true story, corroborated by ambiguous pseudo-historical references. Its unresolved conclusion has sparked significant public, critical and scholarly analysis, and the narrative has become a part of Australia's national folklore as a result. There we go. Cool. Nice
I've got
cover.
a,
Look at that.
I want to ask you guys a question in the chat too, actually. Do you think the headmistress knew Sarah was going to kill herself?
I
Yeah,
think-
there's yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like Sarah just, dealt with it herself. Now she didn't even have to bother doing anything. She kind of like, self-deleted herself from the school.
Did she,
Because
or was she pushed?
Oh, I think she did it herself.
Yeah.
No, I do too, yeah. But it was suggested that because the headmistress knows that she's gone. She says, like, she makes
That's
a
what I
lie,
was gonna
doesn't
say.
she? That
Yeah,
says,
she
the
lies and
Guardian
says-
picked her up. It took her off in the early morning. So
Which
how
is
does
a
she know
lie.
that?
Yes.
It's a lie.
It was going to be a lie anyway because her garden, they couldn't even get a hold of him. That's why
Right.
they're
Yeah.
going to kick her out. So she made other arrangements.
Hmm.
Okay, well, she's going back to the orphanage. Okay, well, somebody from the orphanage should have came and picked her up, then she would have said something like that. But no, she lied all the way through, saying, and then, of course, they find her a day or so later in the bushes.
Right. Well, it's funny that the author is vague even in the text. The abridged version that I heard, it's even vaguer than it is in the film, by the way. So there's an intentional authorship going on here where it's all about the mystery. There are so many loose ends that is actually the theme of the book and the film, that this is all about loose ends and how we speculate ourselves into madness, which is what the cocktail scene is about with the headmistress, where she's telling a story, and then she forgets what she was saying, and she has this kind of Alzheimer's moment where her memory breaks. It's like everybody's losing their minds, including the boyfriend and girlfriend, like the chambermaid and the gardener or whatever, the gardener's assistant. It's everybody's losing it, including the housewife, the policeman's wife as well. She's kind of a little jittery.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is all happening around the same time that Jack the Ripper is roaming around too. So it's like it's a global thing. It's like is the world going mad? Has God forsaken us?
The groundskeeper, when he was talking to the head arborist, was talking about that. He specifically means Jack the Ripper and others,
Plants can move.
Right.
That,
I kind of think that the headmistress, because she had such a struggle and she had to rehearse that speech to Sarah, which is something that she wouldn't have to rehearse because she's so blunt with everyone else all the time. But I think that made me think that she knew what she was doing. And specifically to say you're going back to the orphanage and I've made arrangements means there's no other way out. There's nowhere else you can go. You're going back to the place that you definitely do not want to be. There's no way out for you. Good night. And then the cover up right away of, she was picked up, knowing that she didn't have to go look, or she could have just been honest and said, I don't know where she went. Let's go look for her. But no,
exactly.
like she knew she's probably offed herself on it. And I thought it was part of the anger was the connection to Miranda. I'm making this up right now, headcanon, but because Miranda to her has caused all these issues. And Sarah's the most connected person left to Miranda. So she wanted to punish her. That's my headcanon.
Well, and headcanon is exactly what my point that I was trying to make. I think the author intentionally wrote the book to create headcanon, and she provoked more headcanon by not opening up her mouth about the truth about the book. She actually, her and the author both pressed this notion that it might be true. I don't know. It's like we're not saying it's hard to say, It's
That's a great move by the author, to keep the mystery, don't you think? That's
stoke the fire.
Stoke the fire, exactly. Yeah.
And the roof jump was teased, obviously, when the girls were leaving for their trip, and she was left behind.
Yes, you do see. Yes, where are we? I've got an image of it somewhere.
Yeah, and I take back my statement about she lied about the guardians picking her up, and they're just gone now. I mean, it could very well be that she was paid off by the guardian, and the guardian tossed her off the roof. I mean, that's a possibility too, because he was just like, I'm not paying for college. This was all a waste of my time. She's not interested in guys anyway. I mean, like, you know what I mean? It's like, who knows what the person's intentions were.
But then
that's kind of invoked, isn't it? A little bit that some of these girls just have guardians.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is kind of a dumping ground for people, But the chauffeur, she talks about she had a brother in the orphanage.
That's her brother.
Right.
They're, I don't know if they even knew that they were that close to each other physically. But he talks about a dream where she shows up telling him that she has to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the next day, she's dead.
It sounds like they haven't seen each other for years. They probably could become separated. They don't realize they're so close. Low physically, like not physically. What's the word? In location, he's very close to her, but he doesn't know she's at the boarding school. That's kind of weird.
One of the better performances, which makes me, I don't think she was pushed, is because right after the headmistress leaves the room, they give you a shot of her, and she's sad, but then she smiles.
Yes.
And just for a second, and they cut away, and then she's gone. So that's what
she's made her mind up what to do, because she's going to be sent back to the orphanage otherwise. Right. And she's lost Miranda. She's lost her love, her best friend.
Right. There's probably a Romeo and Juliet notion in her head. It's like, well, if my girlfriend is going to leave, I'm going to go join her. Right.
Yeah.
So
I know what I have to do, kind of a feeling.
Yeah.
She's
not
great.
That you should do that. Don't do that. Yes.
Right.
She's great.
No capes, please. In the narrative, the headmistress is actually led by the ghost of Sarah off a cliff at the end of the film. At the end of the movie, in the book, she's led by a ghost of her.
Cool.
Okay.
They did say in the movie that she died. She's found dead at the bottom of a hill.
Right.
Because they think she must have been trying to climb it.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystical notation where, like, people just walk off into a crevice between two rocks that doesn't appear to be the right size, right? Like that, people walk through planes of reality a little bit in the book. At least the narrative that I heard.
Stephen. Yeah, I've heard
I
like
got that
theories
too.
about
When
this
they're
as well.
going through the rocks, like, are they really going through those rocks, or are they going somewhere else?
A little bit of an adjustment on the camera angle, or maybe a diaptic shot or something would have sold this slipping between, like in the cat in Coraline, where it slips between like two pages of the universe or something. And they're just gone. They're just not around anymore. They've
my
stepped
teenage
away.
self, I thought it was like a UFO story, an abduction story. But as I've watched it, as I've got older, I see it more as like a warp, a time warp, or even a dimensional door. Going through to another plane of existence or something.
Like they went through the fairyland or the fae.
Yeah.
You hear people will find a portal to another realm, and then when they come back, they think they've only been gone a couple hours, and all of a sudden it's like years later or something.
Right.
Or,
Yes.
I stepped through a fairy doorway. Yeah.
To explain why she's been out there for 10 days, and she's still alive when they find him. Just a little dehydrated, a little scratched up, but not like
that was weird, wasn't it, Blair? And they make a point of saying that her feet are untouched. Her feet are fine. She's got scratches on her body and on her arms and herself, but her feet are untouched. It's like, hey, how can that be? She's barefoot, but her feet were fine.
But
she's not wearing a corset.
Yeah, right.
Well, maybe she was filming that same sequence that the boy was, where he's just moving his arms and legs back and forth on the ground. And that's how she got all scratched up, because his feet were fine. His feet were just fine.
God blimey, Governor, she's got no corset on. Unbelievable.
What's a big deal? They talk about how they were not violated.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
She's intact.
Yeah, she's intact. She's very, very much so
the
intact.
other, the fat girl. She's intact.
Right.
Well, thank God.
That was a big concern. Right?
No, it was. I'm not laughing at that. Just like the doctor was like, I've given her a thorough examination and she's intact. She's all there.
They should have said,
"There's no slap that guy in the head with the script." It's like, dude, too much pride in the dialogue. You sound a little icky. All right, dude, back off. All right.
There's no reason to check the fat one. She's fine.
They're tight and right. Yeah, there we go.
Anyway,
that's why she was so angry at the end, screaming. They didn't want her. Whoever they were, the spirits of the rock. They wanted the 3 fit ones. They didn't want the fatty.
No, sorry, no fatty. I didn't fatty. Her scream was just ear splitting, though.
Yeah,
oof. That was, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it does have a total.
We were talking about Aliens, right, on Thursday, and the scream that Newt has is it's actually a very good scream, perfect for the camera. Yeah. In this, no.
Yeah, no.
There's glasses about to shatter. I think stainless steel might actually crack and fracture.
Yeah, this
did it wake you up, Zaxx? Oh, Jesus! Stop that.
It would have, giving me nightmares too.
Ouch.
Yeah, ear splitting.
Guys, going back to the pacing, and I don't disagree. You're right. It is very slow paced, especially the first, 30, 40 minutes. What do you think? Are we viewing that from like a modern day take where, we got used to the quick cuts, the quick edits, the fast moving film and short videos, or what? Do you think were more films like that back in the 70s? Like slow?
I think a lot of movies in the 70s were slow. And this is his first one, so that's like kind of a problem with early directors is they take too long to do shit. Right. As they get better, they realize, this thing doesn't need to be fucking, 30 seconds. Let's tighten it down to 15 or 20. You cut little time segments out. You cut a lot of time out, but you tighten it up a little. I think that's just something you learn as you make stuff.
Great point.
Yeah, and he probably did not have editorial control. Like I could probably guarantee that he didn't have editorial.
Ah, okay.
So even the shots that were chosen might not have been his. He just put it on film.
Right. Yeah,
it was almost. Power. I was gonna say it's almost like a series of illustrations.
Yeah.
I was thinking
that. Said art,
paintings,
as opposed to what we're used to in film storytelling, where a lot of the shots and the angles, like you guys have said, and the way they hold it, you expect something You're showing me this for a reason. Something is going to happen,
Right.
but then nothing happens. But it's like, it's like art. It's like someone, you know, drew, these are paintings that they were showing us, and they're beautiful paintings. But it's just where I've been trained to analyze that, to go, okay, well, they're only doing this because they're showing me this for a reason.
Right.
They've chosen these shots for a reason.
Right.
For this,
like if you were to watch an amateur horror film and the guy holds on a window and even the drapery is moving a little bit, but nothing happens. It's like, dude, you know what you do understand that that's a trope, right? You didn't do that by accident, did you? Oh no, I didn't. I had no idea that. Oh, you really? Oh, that wasn't my intention. I thought the window was cool and we were looking through. I'm like, dude, wow.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Yeah, we've been kind of trained to, you know, when they do
I
this,
would say that's
gonna
it.
happen.
We've become more educated as I guess as critics, as film watchers, but I don't know. I enjoy things like Brazil. I mean, I enjoy even George Clooney's Solaris was really great. So I have a very different understanding coming to this movie. It's like I didn't really lose patience with it because I never planned on having patience with it. I knew it might be a little bit of a hard watch because it's some really good director's first time, and I'm sure this was really clunky. And you know, you start seeing some of the actors and actresses, you're like, okay, this is gonna be hard to watch. All right, but
at least they didn't try to make them do too much, like you said earlier.
Right.
You could tell they cut back on the expectations for the dialogue and some of the scenes.
And there may have been whole sequences shot, right, that just never made it to the final cut.
I think the worst, even,
god awful.
So
you know?
Like
So,
Zaxx was talking before about big cuts, you know, big jump cuts where you think, wait a minute, it feels like they've missed out a whole section here.
Right.
Probably
the payoff.
That dance hall bit at the end where all the girls start screaming and the teacher is cowering behind a chair. There was so much missing from that scene, I think, that
what the fuck is going on?
You know,
it was art that it was. I think, they're not trying to have it be real at that point. That was a bit off the rails. And things like the teacher, I would have liked to have seen some of that or have a way to have hinted to that. But we're kind of just told about it after that. The teacher. Oh, by the way, the teacher runs off and she's not wearing any pants or a skirt. And we hear about it from, I think her name's Edith or Edie. The annoying fat
that's
one.
the way it's done in the book as well. Is that it's just told as a piece of evidence to a police officer. It happens way off camera.
Okay.
I thought that added to the mystery. This is like, because then, oh wow, you know, we don't see any of that. We just got to think, wait a minute, she did what? She ran off, disappeared.
Did she really? You know, you're almost asking yourself, can I trust this witness? Even
they could have. I mean, what I would have done maybe is have, when the teachers and the students start to wake up and they realize she's gone and Edie comes screaming around the corner, you could have that show that bit of reuniting them, realizing someone else is missing, the girls are gone, then a bit of a scramble, then you go back to them returning to the house, but they just go right to, they're back at the house, and here, by the way, here's the teacher is gone too. Right. So I mean, it's nothing wrong with the way they did it. It's just I would have liked to have seen a bit more of the reactions.
Yeah,
I could almost imagine that the entire sequence was filmed, but when they got the footage, it was too dark. Like, I could totally see something like that happening. Like, he decided to film it in the evening at dusk, and the takes that were really good just didn't have enough light, and they just couldn't process them. Or, I mean, I could totally see something like that happening. They just lost the whole sequence.
Yeah, you're probably right.
The film has that kind of feel to it. It feels really rough, like THX 1138 has that kind of rough feeling to
that's got a really rough feel, rough cut feel to it, the whole look of it, like a student film.
Yeah, exactly.
Art is explosion from Matt.
Art is explosion.
I don't know what that is.
Points to anyone who gets the reference. I don't know either. It's gone over my head.
No,
I never know who said that.
I'm glad I watched it, Gray.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it for what it was. Something different.
The mystery sticks with you after, which is a cool, because they don't answer the question. You try to think through, and there wasn't really a point of view from Miranda, which you could have then used to clue in some of the things, but they don't really give you that either, which is okay. It adds to the mystery of what's going on. If they give you her point of view, then you have maybe too much.
So what do we think happened to him?
Yeah,
what do you guys think happened to him?
Same thing. What do you guys think? Let's go, Stephen. What's your theory?
Well, first of all, you guys were all there when Gray mentioned this, like last week, wasn't it? Like last weekend or something like that.
Yeah, we were on last weekend.
Backstage or something.
Yeah,
I don't even remember now. But you had mentioned this on the stream at the end of the stream, and we were talking about Australian film production, and you mentioned it, and I just went down the rabbit hole. Like seconds later, I'm like looking it up. I'm like, the next day, I'm watching documentaries on the novel and on the author, and I just went down the rabbit hole on it. Rock structures like that. Now imagine, okay, if you trust what geologists actually say, these are columns. Those are columns of volcanic crystal forms.
Right.
That were inside of a massive earth structure we would call a volcano. And we're looking at the bones of an ancient volcano that's been washed away.
Yes.
Right? In much the same way that Devil's Tower is a very similar structure. This is
Close
a decayed
Encounters.
version of what Devil's Tower actually is. It's all those struts of hexagonal columns, all made out of basalt or whatever rock that the volcanic structure was made out of. Now, because it's so decayed, there could be slips the size of a person that go down like 30, 40 feet into the earth.
Right.
And those girls could just be gone. Like one of them slips, they're all holding each other's hands, and the whole party just gone in a heartbeat. And you hear them for a second, and then it's just squish. And that's it. I mean, there are holes like that in the structure. That's what some of these documentaries say, that because there's these gaping holes that just go down. You drop a rock down, and you're just listening and just going down into the earth. So the possibility of them just vanishing physically, like no mysticism involved at all, except for them being silly girls who read too much poetry. Right? And that's what the book does. It romanticizes the whole thing into this fairyland.
Oh, yeah. That's
so I found the whole thing very fascinating.
Very practical answer. They just fell down a big ass hole,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, one of those caves that you see at one point the policeman like just shouting into the cave, but no one goes in. Like I'm not going in there. Like getting lost, they could just get lost, like a bit like Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn, that kind of thing. Lost in the cave. So I don't know.
The inverse of Jack the Beanstalk.
Oh yeah, well going deep down into the ground. I want to go for the kind of through a portal, through another dimension idea, and just they went to another place. I know that it's practically true that it probably just fell down a hole, but I want to believe in something more. I'm the foolish mystic, guys.
Well, the reason why it's such a rabbit hole is this idea that there's no knowing whether or not it's fiction or based on a true story. There are a lot of loose stories. There's been like Reddit groups that have been reading this story forever, and they've been scouring through libraries all around the Australian area, and there's some boys that went missing, but they were like 50, 60 miles away from the rock and had nothing to do with it. And there's even gravestones that talk about missing children, but they happen to be crimes that happened in another city. And, people have been doing research on this, seriously trying to find out. But the reason why I would agree with you, Gray, is that it's dimensional is because the fiction is telling of fictional characters. So when they disappear in the book, they do slip into another dimension, the dimension that the Twilight Zone covers. And that's this public discord on, well, what could have happened to them? We haven't found any bodies yet, so we don't know if they've been taken or not. And it's like this whole barnyard, conversation where the ladies in knitting groups are like having day-long conversations on the subject of, well, I read this science fiction novel once. Oh, you didn't? Not a science fiction novel. Doris, I never would have guessed. And it's like that going on. So yeah, they slipped off into another dimension, the dimension of speculation.
Oh, that's a great dimension of speculation. Thanks, Stephen. And Blair, are you thinking they just went down, they fell down a hole, or they got lost in the caves or something?
I would like to think that they went through into another dimension. They found a gateway.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm thinking that the rocks just ate them, just sucked the blood out of them, and it was the rocks were hungry.
The rocks came to life like a troll. the Troll movie.
Lured him in and just drank him dry.
Don't know what Nosferatu's on about. Nosferatu, you madman. And shout out to Six. No, I'm on coffee. It's 3:30 p.m. on Saturday afternoon for me, so I'm being very good. Zaxx, how about you, Zaxx? What are your thoughts?
I think probably my guess, aliens is what I thought from watching it, was some kind of UFO something was pulling them up there, something was luring them to them, and then the red cloud, and they kept showing the clouds, and everything was a perspective shot up at those rocks to get you to look up, and so, but the hole in that gaping hole, as Nos says in the chat, thank you, Nos, and gaping holes, is that the one that's found. Why is she found? Like, was she rejected? Why, if that's the case, would they have done that? And then why her feet fine, but the rest of her is messed up? All that stuff, because what that tells me, she hadn't been walking, and she had been somewhere where she was relatively cared for, or at least given water, because if not, she's definitely dead. So if there was no time slip, she was being taken care of from someone. The thing with the gaping holes, as Nos would say, is that you'd think she would remember that. If it wasn't something mystical or mysterious or alien, if just her friends fell down a hole, she would recall that.
She would.
To be able to say.
Great point.
And everyone else, like, there was mystical stuff. They fell asleep. Like, I mean, I have insomnia. I don't know how these girls do it, but they just lay down on a rock and they all go to sleep. Like, that's not a natural thing that happened.
Yeah.
You know, the clock stopped. All those signs are pointing in that direction for me. So I think something happened. Something took them. And for whatever reason, they didn't want the brunette. I would have taken,
or at least that brunette, because they took the teacher.
She was always complaining.
True, yeah, they did take the teacher.
The teacher was strange, wasn't he? Go on, Blair. Yeah,
I would have left the teacher and taken the brunette. I mean, that's just me. That's my personal,
Well, she was practically one of them, right? She was totally into like everything. Wait, that dissertation she does on the rock itself and what it's made out of, and the geology was awesome.
That was fascinating, Steve, wasn't it?
I could have used a little more of that kind of right into camera, almost hypnotizing kind of conversations. We could have used a lot more of that. If this film had a different soundtrack, just tonally a different soundtrack, so much more could have been achieved. Just some warping, kind of twisty sounds of like the air quality getting heavier. Those kinds of sound effects that they do in these kinds of films where, like it almost like your ear goes dead for a second, like those kinds of tonal sounds. I think would have helped this movie a lot. So it would have felt like something was happening or opening or releasing or seducing or something like that.
Yeah, I just noticed when the last time we see the girls, they get up and they start walking up the little hill thing there. That brunette isn't quite as entranced as the other two. So maybe that's why they booted her,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just sometimes
She's still got faculties.
Yeah.
You guys think Aldan was involved? I mean, he was there. He admits it.
I think he was. I think it was him with the shrooms he was talking about before.
Yeah,
definitely. Zaxx, you came on after we talked about the music. What did you think of the flute, the pan?
Zamfir with his pan flute. I made the comment to my wife, "Do you remember Zamfir?" And she's like, "What?"
Steven was talking about that.
There was always this Zamfir commercial was always on. It was like the best of Zamfir and playing the pan flute. And so I recognized it immediately. And I looked and sure enough, it was Zamfir. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And
that's fantastic.
I missed that. Yeah. Oh God, that was all over the TV back then, man.
Oh,
you could almost imagine like the press agent for the foundation that still holds the rights to that music to being like, yeah, we're gonna make lots of money, Rock. We're gonna make plenty of money. Just sign right here, Rock, on the contract. It's like one of those kinds of deals, like late night television. It's a big thing, really big right now. It's big.
The best. There was Zamfir, and there was someone else that was like
somebody else. I can't remember.
I remember.
I don't know why I'm remembering Chopin. I keep remembering.
He was a keyboard guy, wasn't it?
I think you're right. I think it was a keyboard guy.
Who's Kenny? It wasn't Kenny G. It was another. Zamfir, and I know who you're talking about. He was like a Latin person, maybe.
Oh, right.
No. Oh, fuck, I know. He had the mustache. I almost know his fucking name. Like a new agey guy. He did a big thing at the Acropolis. Oh, gotta get remember his name.
Kenny Loggins.
No. No, this is not.
Mustache not big enough.
No, he's like an international name that as soon as you know it, you'd be like, oh, that fucking guy, you know. He wasn't like Evangelos, but he was like a wannabe version, maybe.
Right. He was the elevator version.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
it was
these
Fear
guys all
and
were, though.
that
It's
guy.
like hysterical.
Oh god, yeah, that brings back all those memories of.
Soft jazz.
It
Being
says here,
stuck
guys,
watching those commercials.
just briefly, the main title music was derived from 2 traditional Romanian panpipe pieces. There we go. Performed by George Zamfir, playing the panpipe or the pan flute. Awesome.
Yeah. Need I remind you that Dracula was barely 15 years old. The novel, the original first printing, was barely 15 years old when the story took place. So there was that also going on as well.
Dempsey
This
say,
is
look
gonna
up
bug
Richard
me.
Cheese. He will be sorry. I don't know.
Richard Cheese.
Dare we?
Okay. Are we good then? It sounds it's a good moment to maybe finish things. What's the word? Close
Sure.
the stream. Do you want to shout anything out?
Finish each other off. Great. Is that what you're going to
Finish
say?
with a bit of Richard Cheese before we finish. Sorry, Dempsey, I'm just being stupid. I know. Great to get your takes on the movie. I enjoyed watching it. I watched it in one go as well, surprisingly, because like you, Zaxx, I thought it is going to be slow. This I remember it, basically being quite slow. But I was pulled into the atmosphere and the panpipes, of course. The panpipes get me every time. So,
Nothing beats Zamfir.
anything you want to shout out before we finish? Start with Zaxx. You came in at the end, so let's get you first. What have you got coming up?
Circle of Jerks tomorrow. I think we're on AJ's channel tomorrow night. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's coming up, and then I might be on with MVP on Sunday at I think 8 Central
Nice. Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
on his channel. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on, Zaxx. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Greg.
And thanks for watching the movie. That's unbelievable. That's 2 now you've watched. I can't believe it. What are you doing?
I know you're pulling me in, Greg. How can I say no to you?
It was Lock, Stock, wasn't it, last week? Lock, Stock and 2 Smoking Barrels, and we ended up somehow getting to Picnic at Hanging Rock, Stephen. So, yeah, I'm glad
that's
enjoyed
bizarre.
it.
It's like...
And deep dived it as well. That was cool.
When I saw you put it up, I was just like, wow, that's crazy. That's great. Just
It
went
made me
for
want to
It's
rewatch
like,
it.
you know
when we
what? I
talked
like
about
it. Let's go.
I've got to watch it. Okay, so sorry, Blair, I'm not jumping past you. Blair, are you going to be on Roman stream again? Were you on the Alien stream, by the way? Aliens. I was at work.
I was.
Missed it.
Yep.
Again.
I was on the Alien stream. I'm going to be on the not this week. It's The Last of Us. The week after, we're doing the 2 bad Alien movies, 3 and 4.
Uh-oh.
Yikes.
Okay.
And then we're eventually in the future going to do another one with just Prometheus and Covenant, the even worse Alien movies.
Oh,
You guys
Jesus.
can stop now.
Which are
Like,
worse?
It's a win if you stop now.
I know, right? But we were so when we did the stream, it was only the first 2, and then we were going to talk about the others maybe, but we got to like the 4-hour mark, and then we started talking about them, and you could tell we were about to go for another 4 hours easy.
Yeah.
And Roman's like, "No, we're gonna stop. We'll do a whole other video on this." So yeah, I'm gonna be on those.
Nice
Definitely.
one.
Wise man.
Yeah. All I could say is hiss about those other. I'm sorry, Ridley. I know it was your
I'm with
little...
Nos on that. Yeah.
I'd rather watch Suburban Commando than Prometheus. That's not.
so awful. Pissed me off, like royally pissed me off.
So much potential. It had so much potential.
Oh my god!
They just
Such a
blew
great
it.
universe.
What is it about directors who used to be amazing, who come back later on and go back to the story,
Fuck it all
like
up.
George Lucas, Ridley Scott, what are you doing?
I don't.
Spielberg too.
There you go, there's another one, Spielberg.
I've heard
Steven,
that,
how about you, man? Do you want to...
for-
Oh, sorry, Zaxx, before...
I was going to say for Ridley
Yeah, I don't have
Scott,
anything to
especially-
punch.
Nothing to punch.
Nope, nothing to punch, nothing to push.
Punch me, even.
Ridley has a reputation for not being a great writer or having great scripts all the time. He's a great director. And so I think the more pull he gets on the story, it's not as good of a story. That's a theory I've heard. I don't know if that's true. There
Okay.
you go.
Stephen,
Could be, yeah.
how about you? Nothing to push or punch or
No.
shout out.
Nothing
Okay.
actually. It's like I'm trying to stay a little loose on my movement, just in case I can't.
No problem. And I appreciate you, mate. You reached out to jump on. This is great to get your take.
Yeah,
I'm glad,
that was
I'm glad
great.
You started exploring this movie.
I found out who that person is. Yanni.
Yanni!
Yanni?
Yes, it's Yanni. You're right.
Yanni!
All over the 90s. His fucking keyboards and his, whatever. Oh my God. Did you guys ever see the Adult Swim crack they did? You had a character like Wendy Carlos or Walter Carlos, and then you had a Yanni type guy, and then you had a Vangelis, and they're all coming together because Halley's Comet is coming, and they're doing this little thing. They're trying to like repulse the comet. It's hilarious. I'll send you guys the links. But if you watch that, you totally will pick up on the tropes of these people and what they're doing, and all about it.
Matt's trolling now.
No way. I never thought I'd see Matt trolling in the chat. That's awesome. Look at that. Did Stephen just advertises bowel
good to see.
movements?
It's good to see.
I got the same treatment on Roman's channel. I mentioned how loose I was, and it just all of the boys fell out of the closet laughing, and that was it.
It sounded like it was a lot of fun, and God, I'd love to rewatch that. But you could talk about aliens, couldn't you, for hours and hours?
It's great.
No doubt.
Oh, we did.
No doubt.
We talked 4 hours of
Yeah,
all over it.
just getting started, right?
Roman can scrub through a gallery of photos. He's got a real knack. Roman is. I tell you, he's got. He's like, yeah, and then the people do this, and then they walk through this door, and they look at this thing,
right.
and they're like, oh wow, yeah, look at this thing, yeah, this whole thing sucks. So moving on. He's so crass about it. It's great. He's like, yep, drama. Oh, here's a cool part. It's great. It's great.
There you go.
Okay, Joe, we're finished up then. So thank you so much for watching in the chat, and thanks for your input, especially Al Dan. Like Al Dan, having been there, he's an Aussie himself. He's been to Hanging Rock, me too, but I don't remember anything about it for some reason. No, I'm joking. Yeah, it was a really good discussion, and we recommend the movie. Give it a shot, see what you think. If you've got 2 hours or an hour 40 to spare, and it is pretty slow, just to warn you, but it's good to see. And I want to watch more Peter Weir movies now. Don't know about you guys after seeing this.
Interestingly, there's so much secondary material on this book and the movie and the events and the pop culture surrounding it. There's a huge amount of secondary viewing material on this on YouTube.
Yeah, it's like the Blair Witch of its day. It's really cool.
Yeah, pretty much.
Great. What are we watching next week?
Next week. Okay, we'll have to talk about this after. I haven't thought about it. We went from 1990s last week, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, to the 1970s. So it's got to be either 80s or 2000s. Oh my God.
Jump around.
And before we finish, this is to you on the panel, and this is to the chat.
Te ye,